year is 2025. The world stands at the edge of a great turning. Nations tremble, economies shake. The foundations of the earth seem to move beneath our feet. Some call it a crisis, others call it chaos. But what if it is more than that? What if it is prophecy unfolding before our eyes? My friends, we are living in the days foretold long ago. The signs are all around us. The rise and fall of empires, the shifting of powers, the shaking of systems that men once thought unshakable. And yet in the midst of the turmoil, there is a call. An urgent, resounding call for those who have ears to hear. What if 2025 is not just another year, but a threshold, a doorway into something greater, something destined? What if the events unfolding now are not random, but part of a divine blueprint? The question is not what the world will do next, but what will you do? Will you stand in fear, or will you rise with understanding? Will you be swept away by the storm, or will you become the storm's answer? Tonight, we will unveil the mystery. We will decode the signs, and we will prepare for what is coming, because the shift is here, and you were born for such a time as this. Throughout history, nations have risen and fallen, empires have come and gone, and the balance of global power has shifted like the tides of the ocean. But what happens when the very fabric of the world order begins to unravel? We are witnessing a moment unlike any before, a time of great shaking where the pillars of long-standing powers tremble and the landscape of nations is being redrawn before our eyes. The world that once seemed stable is now unraveling at an unprecedented pace. Governments that were once mighty are now facing instability. Leaders who once commanded influence are now struggling to maintain control. And the alliances that held the world together are beginning to fracture. Wars and conflicts erupt in places that were once thought secure, and regions that were once silent are now filled with unrest. The very institutions that nations placed their trust in are now questioned as corruption, inefficiency, and division rise to the surface. The economic engines that fueled global superpowers are sputtering. Debt levels soar beyond comprehension, and once dominant currencies are facing threats from new financial systems, alternative reserves, and technological disruptions. The global economy is no longer held in the hands of a few, but is shifting towards a new structure, a new order, and a new way of operation. The power that was once centralized in the West is now being challenged by emerging forces in the East. Nations that were once dependent are now becoming independent, and those that controlled are losing their grip. Military tensions escalate as nations seek to assert dominance in a rapidly changing world. The balance of power that kept conflicts at bay is no longer as effective. Old alliances are tested. New threats emerge, and battles are fought not just on the ground, but in cyberspace, in economies, and in the realm of influence. Technology has become a new battlefield, and control over information, energy, and resources is now more valuable than control over land itself. The moral and cultural fabric of societies is also shifting. What was once considered foundational truth is now being debated, rewritten, or erased entirely. Values that once unified people are now sources of division. The principles that upheld nations are being redefined. And as a result, many find themselves lost in the midst of change. A war is being waged not just on the battlefield, but in the hearts and minds of people everywhere. Prophecies of old spoke of a time when kingdoms would rise against kingdoms, when global powers would be shaken, and when the world would be thrust into a time of decision. We are no longer speaking of distant possibilities. We are witnessing these things unfold in real time. What is happening now is not just a geopolitical shift, but a prophetic fulfillment. The unraveling of nations is not an accident. It is part of a greater design. Those who have discernment will see beyond the chaos and recognize the hand of destiny moving upon the earth. The financial systems of the world are trembling. The economies that once seemed invincible are now showing cracks. Nations that stood tall in wealth and power are now drowning in debt, while others, long overlooked, are rising in influence. The global economic order is no longer as it once was, and those who fail to see the shift will be left behind. For decades, the financial world operated under a structure that appeared unshakable. A handful of currencies dictated global trade, central banks controlled interest rates, and powerful institutions managed the flow of wealth. But now, the system is being tested. Inflation soars, markets fluctuate wildly, and trust in these institutions is eroding. The promises of economic security are breaking down, leaving individuals, businesses, and entire nations searching for stability. Debt has become a burden that even the richest nations can no longer ignore. Governments continue to print money to sustain their economies, but with each new dollar created, the value of existing wealth diminishes. The cycle of borrowing and spending is unsustainable, and those who once held economic dominance are now facing their own decline. The reliance on paper money and central banking is being questioned as new forms of currency and alternative economic systems begin to take hold. The redistribution of wealth is happening in ways few expected. The rise of digital currencies, decentralized finance, and emerging economic powers is shifting control away from traditional financial centers. Countries that were once seen as secondary players are now establishing themselves as key figures in global trade. Natural resources, technological innovation, and independent financial systems are creating new pathways of wealth that challenge the old order. Those who once ruled the financial world are finding their influence slipping as new markets, new investors, and new economic alliances reshape the landscape. The wealthy elite who controlled industries, banking, and international finance are being confronted by a world that no longer follows their rules. Nations are forming their own trade agreements, creating independent payment systems, and looking for ways to bypass the old financial structures. Countries once dependent on the West are turning to the East. Gold, commodities, and digital assets are becoming more valuable as people lose trust in traditional money. The world is shifting away from the centralization of wealth and toward a new form of financial independence. The economic instability is leading to unrest among people. As the gap between rich and poor widens, frustration grows. Protests erupt over rising costs of living, job losses, and financial policies that benefit only a few. Governments struggle to keep control as their citizens demand change. The social fabric is fraying as economies weaken, and desperation fuels movements that seek to overthrow the systems that once ruled the world. The question is no longer whether the financial order will change. It is already changing. The redistribution of wealth is not a possibility. It is happening. The way money moves, the way power is held, and the way economies function will never be the same again. Those who are aware of this shift will prepare, but those who ignore it will find themselves unprepared for what is to come. A great war is unfolding, but it is not fought with weapons alone. It is a war of ideologies, of beliefs, of truth itself. The battle is no longer just between nations or political parties. It is between worldviews, between those who seek to redefine reality and those who hold to the foundations of what has always been. The very concept of truth is under siege, and those who fail to recognize the nature of this battle will be swept away by the rising tide of deception. The world is being divided into opposing camps, not merely over policies or laws, but over the very nature of right and wrong. What was once considered self-evident truth is now being challenged at every level. History is being rewritten, morality is being redefined, and institutions that once held societies together are now being dismantled. The media, once a source of information, has become a weapon of persuasion, shaping narratives to fit agendas rather than reporting. The voices of truth are silenced, censored, or ridiculed, while deception is dressed as enlightenment. Governments, corporations, and cultural influencers are working together to reshape the way people think. Through education, entertainment, and technology, entire generations are being programmed to accept new versions of reality. Words are redefined, history is erased, and ideologies that once remained on the fringes now dictate policies and public discourse. What was once unthinkable is now celebrated, and those who dare to question it are cast out as enemies of progress. At the heart of this battle is control, the control of thoughts, beliefs, and ultimately behavior. It is no longer just about governance, but about the very foundation upon which societies are built. The ability to manipulate perception is now more powerful than any military force. Those who control the flow of information control the minds of the people. Narratives are shaped, crises are manufactured, and the illusion of truth is carefully constructed. But this war is not only fought in the political and cultural realms, it is spiritual in nature. The forces behind these ideological battles are not merely human, they are ancient, seeking to lead humanity away from its divine purpose. The rise of confusion, division, and deception is not random, it is intentional. The spiritual war is intensifying, and with it comes the challenge to stand firm in truth, no matter the cost. As division spreads, families are torn apart, friendships dissolve, and entire nations turn against themselves. The world is being primed for greater conflict, where words become weapons and beliefs become battlegrounds. It is no longer enough to remain neutral. Every person must choose a side. Those who refuse to conform to the shifting moral landscape will face opposition, but those who embrace it will find themselves swept further into the deception. The world is being prepared for something greater, a moment when the lines between truth and falsehood will be drawn with undeniable clarity. Those who recognize the battle and stand for truth will be tested, but they will also be part of the remnant that refuses to bow to the coming deception. Amidst the turmoil, the wars, the economic shaking, and the collapse of old systems, something else is happening. Something greater, something unseen by the world, but revealed to those who have eyes to see. A spiritual awakening is rising, not in the places of power, not in the halls of government, but in the hearts of people. As the world grows darker, the hunger for truth, for meaning, for something beyond the material is growing stronger. For too long, people have placed their trust in systems that are now failing them. They believed in governments that now betray them, in economies that now collapse, in institutions that now crumble. They sought purpose in material wealth, only to find emptiness. They sought identity in ideologies, only to be left confused. But now, as the illusions are stripped away, the souls of men and women are being stirred. The very chaos that the world fears is awakening a deeper search for something real, something unshakable, something eternal. Throughout history, every great shaking has preceded a great awakening. When civilizations fall, when powers shift, when the old ways collapse, the human heart is forced to look beyond the natural. This is what is happening now. As deception increases, as false promises fail, as the world spirals into division, a remnant is rising. Those who are no longer satisfied with empty words, those who refuse to be swept away by the lies of this age. They are seeking truth, and they are finding it. The spiritual war that rages in the world is not just a battle of ideologies, it is a battle for the souls of man. The forces of darkness are growing bolder, but so is the light. In every nation, in every land, there are those who are awakening, those who are being called out of the deception, those who are beginning to see with clarity. They are no longer swayed by the propaganda of the age. They are no longer controlled by the systems of men. They are being set apart for something greater. But with this awakening comes a cost. To see the truth is to be set apart from the world. To walk in revelation is to walk against the current. Those who awaken will find themselves in conflict, not just with governments or institutions, but with the very spirit of the age. The world will reject them, mock them, persecute them, and yet they will stand, because what they have found is greater than what they have lost. This awakening is not confined to one group, one nation, or one movement. It is spreading like fire, moving through unexpected places, stirring the hearts of those who once walked in darkness. It is a call to return to truth, to return to righteousness, to return to the foundation that has been abandoned. The shaking of the world is not only a judgment, but an invitation. The world is being prepared for something greater, and those who hear the call will be part of the rising remnant. The world is shifting, the old order is crumbling, and the foundations are being shaken. But in the midst of it all, there is one question that remains. What will you do? This is not just about governments, economies, or ideologies. It is about you. It is about your purpose in this moment of history. You were not placed here by accident. You were born into this time, into this generation for a reason. And as the world enters a time of great change, your role has never been more important. Many will choose to ignore the signs. They will continue to live as if nothing is happening, as if the world will always remain the same. They will hold on to the old ways, clinging to what is familiar, even as it crumbles around them. But those who are awake, those who see the shift, must respond. They must prepare. They must take their place in what is coming. This is not a time to be passive. It is not a time to sit back and watch. It is a time to act, to step forward, to align yourself with the truth. The decisions you make in this season will determine your future. Will you remain in the systems of the world, trusting in what is failing, or will you rise above, seeking wisdom, strength, and guidance beyond the natural? To be prepared for what is coming is to understand the nature of the battle. It is a battle for truth, for discernment, for spiritual strength. The world will try to pull you in many directions, offering solutions that are nothing more than illusions. It will seek to distract you, to silence you, to make you conform, but you must remain firm. You must set your foundation on something greater than what the world offers. This shift will test everything. It will test your faith, your endurance, your ability to stand in the face of pressure. There will be moments of uncertainty, times when the easiest choice will be to follow the crowd. But you were not called to follow. You were called to lead. You were called to be a voice of truth in a world drowning in deception. You were called to be a light in the midst of darkness. The world will tell you that you are powerless, that you cannot change what is coming. But that is a lie. Every great movement, every great awakening, every great transformation in history began with individuals who refused to accept the status quo. They saw the shift, they understood the moment, and they chose to act. This is your time to choose. You have been placed in this season for a reason. The shaking is not just happening around you, it is happening for you. It is calling you to rise, to prepare, to take your place in the unfolding of history. The world is waiting for those who will not be moved by fear, but who will stand in purpose.